welcome to the February meeting of the Lake City Development Corporation Board of Directors. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Deanna, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone at home. This is the first opportunity for some public comment to the board. If you have any item you want to address us on, you have a chance at this point. Seeing none, there will be another chance towards the end of the meeting. So that takes us to approval of the minutes. We have the minutes for the January 15th board meeting. The Chair would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
As mailed.
Any corrections, comments, or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. First item of business we have tonight is the presentation from the City of Coeur d'Alene on the Four Corners Master Planning Project. So, Mr. Greenwood, welcome.
Good evening.
Please give us your name again for the record and your position.
Bill Greenwood, City Coeur d'Alene, Interim Parks Director. So I'm here today to talk to you about a plan you may have all heard a little bit about, the BLM Four Corners Master Plan. I've got a small presentation I'd like to give to you. It's a much shortened version than the one we've been moving around town since June, so it won't take much time. And then I'll talk to you about some possible funding. So with that, I'll go ahead and show you the PowerPoint.
Great.
The egg always gets to move.
I think after 5 years you'd learn on what side to sit, wouldn't you?
That's the A side.
Quiet in the peanut gallery.
Sitting on either side. So you give her a new break.
So, Four Corners Bureau of Land Management Corridor Master Plan information. As I said moments ago, we have been working on this since June, and we'll just go through some of the things that we were talking about. So, we've applied to BLM to lease 29 acres of land. The BLM requires a master plan of that area showing how the land would be used, and those uses fit within the definition of the BLM guidelines. BLM corridor connects an area we've referred to as the Four Corners. There's a slide in here that talks about the Four Corners. I had some calls about folks, and I saw in the paper today some folks still don't know what the Four Corners is, so we'll identify what those are to be very clear. The scope of the master plan would include BLM land, property owned by the city, and property owned by Lcdc within the Four Corners area. For connectivity purpose, the master plan may touch on areas at either end of the corridor and or adjacent to BLM land within that corridor. Again, there'll be a slide that shows that connectivity all the way from the east end of town all the way out north. A variety of uses have been discussed at these workshops. The purpose of the workshops was to gather ideas and from the interested parties and what we'd like to see in the Four Corners BLM corridor. Four Corners BLM Master Plan would be a work in progress and likely take many years to implement as funding and other resources became available. There's no time frame with regard to developing the area accord with the master plan per BLM. So, Four Corners area. As I said, I'd heard from some folks, and then again I said in the paper today, some people don't know what the Four Corners is. Here is Northwest Boulevard, here is Government Way, and Mullen. So, hence the idea of Four Corners. Gives you an idea, an overview of the scope of this property that we'll be looking at. A shot of what city land is, BLM corridor which extends north, and your Lcdc property. Any questions on this slide? So here's the overview of how the connectivity works. We go all the way the east end of town on the Centennial Trail through our new Park McEwen. We've got a new connection through Front Street here into the Four Corners area, and the BLM land is about 200 feet wide, which adds up to a total of 29 acres. We also included in this the connectivity on out north all the way to Mill River and possibly Hutter. There's some good trail connectivity that would tie all of this together.
So, Bill, back to that last slide.
Yes.
So that we're crystal clear about what's included.
Pardon me?
Just so we're crystal clear about what's included in this planning area, you got the basically from the intersection of what you referred to as Mullen.
So right here, so in this plan we've included City Park, Independence Point, the Four Corners. Now, City Park, just along the seawall, we've got a whole bunch of trees in there that need some work. The sidewalk through that area is in disrepair. The tree roots have torn it up pretty good. At Independence Point, for example, we could do some modifications there. We've had a request from the community, the Disability Action Center. They're looking for a ADA transitional dock, and we believe that Independence Point may be a good location for that. So that's been identified as one of the things we'd like to see. The trail corridor that comes out from where the resort is going to be widening that trail into Independence Point as well. We'd like to see that widened and have this connectivity all the way up through the BLM corridor. Did I answer your question?
Okay, then on the north end, what's the terminus on the north end?
Oops. The north end comes shy of Riverstone, out just about another 300 and 400 yards north of 95. So there was a tree that we were using as a marker at some point. It was cut down. It died. So that was sort of the end of where BLM land was at. So that's about where it is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So the opportunity is, it's a great opportunity, and an application to lease the 29 acres have been submitted to the BLM. Once the master plan is approved, a lease would be issued to the city. At any point in the duration of that lease, a patent could be issued to the city of Coeur d'Alene for permanent use of the parcel authorized in the lease agreement. Any questions about that? So the workshops we had, like I said, we started back. Our first one was June 1st last year as a walking tour. I think we had, I'll bet you 30 plus people walking. There were some council people there as well. We then had all these stakeholders invited to meetings. There were 29 stakeholders. So this was the decision point from council last night. Recommend to move forward with the master plan from Four Corners to BLM, contingent on funding available through Lcdc, and to authorize the Park and Rec Commission and staff to solicit RFQs for a land planning firm to transpose the collected data into a master plan concept that's acceptable to the city and BLM. The data that we collected is extensive. We've done a tremendous amount of legwork for what firm that this might go to. We've got just compiled a bunch of stuff for them. So it's, their work will be a lot easier for all our efforts. So with that, here to talk about some funding opportunities that you may want to partner with us on.
Wendy, welcome.
Thank you. Well, go ahead.
Okay. So since before June, we've been working on this plan, as I said earlier. We believe, I've calculated my staff time and previous director Doug Eastwood, his time. We've probably got at least $25,000 wrapped up in getting this to this point. I believe after the RFQ, we'll have that plus more, because I haven't calculated legal's time, administration's time, planning director's time to look at this plan as we come forward. So we'll have easily another $25,000 invested into this as well.
You're talking about equivalent staff hour time.
Correct. Correct. So with that, we were asking for some assistance from your board about helping with this plan that we believe is a good thing for the community.
Okay.
What is the total scope of the plan, cost-wise? Do you have an idea at this point?
I've been told that it could be around $100,000.
And that's including the money that's already been put in, or an additional to that?
There is no money put into this plan at all.
$25,000 that you've already calculated.
It's correct. That is just our staff time, but no cash towards hiring a planning firm to write the plan.
Other questions of Bill? What do you know, Bill? What I mean, we've had similar plans like this, you know, in past years. Walker Macy. I mean, have you gone back and looked at the sort of the cost of those plans and targeting what this might cost?
The plan I looked at as sort of a template was our Parks Master Plan, and it was around $75,000 to $80,000.
Okay. And that probably covered parks all around the city?
Correct. So it was our 10-year master plan that covered all the parks with some projections about and some direction how we might get more parks and other parcels that we would like to include into that.
Okay. And have you approached any kind of firms at all with help estimating that cost? Any design firms?
No, other than speaking to people that I know, Scott Cranston, our Park and Rec Commission chair, had suggested that it would be around $100,000. And I didn't want to talk to any other firms out there just feeling that it wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
Have you talked to anybody else about funding sources, other organizations, institutions?
No, I have not.
Municipalities?
No, I have not yet talked to anybody about partnering with this at all, no.
Brad?
In case anybody's wondering, can you describe what the goal on this is? We're going to do a plan on the four corners, but what's the goal as a result of the plan?
What we were looking
What
for.
are we striving for in this plan?
Right, so what we're looking for is, one, in order for us to lease the land from BLM, they want to know what our intended use is. And one of the requirements within that is that they want to see this for outdoor public recreation. So if we were going to turn it into a coffee house, for example, as Woody suggested last night, there would be a different sort of fee structure involved in that lease agreement. Currently, the way we've got it structured, or the way our intentions are, it's not going to cost us much. So the plan would, with all these interested parties that we've talked to, all the possibilities, big dreams, little dreams, and everything in between that we think that we could maybe shoot for in the future. So the driving force behind this is the lease with BLM to acquire the 29 acres. So they're asking for a master plan. So once the master plan is written, we then have to give it to BLM. Gianna with BLM will take that, and she'll move that around her circle. It might take a year before they get it approved. And then it comes back to us, and then we can get the lease.
And I guess as a follow-up, so we're not doing a plan for the sake of having a plan, so we just have a plan to give to BLM. You have some goals in sight and so forth to kind of guide the planners and give a description of what we're looking for, kind of what the end game is we're trying to get here, so that there's a purpose in this plan.
That's correct. So that trail connectivity, how it connects and links all the parks, all the players that you saw up there, the 29 people, had a comment about, or comments about what they'd like to see in the plan. Last night, it was talked about trying to save the Memorial Field and keep it the way it is. There's some discussion from the Homeowners Association in the area. They'd like to see it adjusted about 90 degrees so that all the noise goes out in the street. So those are the types of things that are identified as all of the possibilities that we could do within the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Deanna?
So, Bill, I'm checking back in some of my memory banks here. The city would have about $50,000 in time and labor and that type of thing involved in this.
Correct.
You feel, I originally heard a quote of about $75,000 to $80,000. When did it jump up to 100? And to tag on to that, as I understand it, the BLM will not do a lease agreement without a master plan. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
So then my first question was, we went from 75 to 80 to 100. What do you?
I don't
is
know
that
where the
just
75 or
ballpark
80
numbers?
came from. Actually, I was misquoted. I misspoke at one of the meetings. I said 150 to 2, and then somebody said it's more like 150 to 100. So we might come in under that. I don't know until we. And I'm writing the plan now, and so it's kind of interesting because, you know, I can write the plan much more extensively, and of course we can get the cost to run up. I'm trying to get exactly what the public and the community has shown us as an interest and try and capture all that in there so that we can get all those things. We could write a very small plan for $25,000.
When you say a plan, you mean a request for proposal, the parameters of what they're being asked to do?
Yeah, the RFQ. So how detailed we get in that is going to really dictate the cost. I'm trying to capture everything that everybody's talked about, and I think we can do it for around 100, but I'm not certain about that.
Yeah.
So again, to go back to that, you've included in that almost from McEwen Field, or are you including in that planning process just from the resort? I know that planning has already been pretty much approved under the PUD, so
So the starting point would be kind of like the clock tower.
the clock tower.
Yeah, so right there where this PUD that's being worked on now, that was approved a while back. So from that point, and how it would run through Independence Point and up through Northwest Boulevard to connect to the BLM land.
And you have included the park in that plan, all of the park or just the waterfront park?
Just just Independence Point and the walk along the seawall.
Okay.
So and then additionally in that, I've also asked to look, I've got a picture from Upper Singletary from how, those stone pillars at the east and the west end of the park, how they used to look. There's an old rendering of it, and how it's a picture of a couple of ladies standing in 1910 and how it might have looked. So I've asked to have that brought back to historical preservation the way it used to look. So there's that part, and then it moves north.
But the drawings and such for that would not be part of the master plan?
I will include that for the firm to use it in writing the master plan, absolutely.
Thank you.
Sounds like the perimeter of City Park.
Well, yeah, so yeah, right. So down on the south end, but at the same time, like I said, I saw an opportunity we've always talked about trying to bring those back, those columns, and I thought this might be a good time to do that.
Denny, I guess there's about 4 questions I have. Number one is, Deanna, you just hit on something I was curious about. If you're looking at the corridor the BLM owns, now you're expanding it larger than that. You're now to the seawall and City Park and obviously the full Four Corners area, which encompasses county property, city property, private property. But you're looking at a plan for encompassing all of that. So that's much more expensive, much more greater scope than just the BLM land, which is what you're looking at for,
Correct.
to get the lease. Second of all, I think, I would like to see you go out personally and check with other partners. There's a lot of stakeholders out there. I mean, everything from the college to the county, so on and so forth. They all should have a stake in this game too. And I think we need to find out what their involvement will be financially. And then third of all, I think it's a little bit nebulous until we do have an RFP to understand exactly what the scope. I mean, it sounds like we're anywhere from 75,000 to 200,000 in estimates here to try to come up with a better understanding of where their cost really is. And I guess you could have it be whatever you want to include in that. If the goal is to get the BLM property lease, then I think we should scope it at that size at this point in time instead of looking, and try to include everything. Because the more you include, the larger or more expensive it's going to be.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Just to comment, Mick, on that, you just keep in mind, too, part of this is property that the Lake City Development Corporation has acquired and aggregated over the years, and we've talked from time to time about what's going to happen with that property. So one of the things we have here is an opportunity for us to build that property into
Didn't I understand that
process. Yeah, Dave.
What I was
So
gonna-
may I address one of the things? So, excuse me, Dave, I'm sorry. But we thought it was prudent at the time to include the Four Corners. It's been talked about since 2002, and we just saw a nice opportunity to dovetail that. We have spoken with the county. We have spoken with the other stakeholders. They are going to participate. I have yet to approach them about participating at this level with the plan. The museum, the Human Rights Institute, the county, the campus, and I see all have been talked to about this. So I felt that at the time when we do start breaking ground, those players have to ante up to help build this thing. And so at this point, I had not yet approached them, not that I wouldn't, if that's what I need to do to get this plan developed. So breaking ground costs is where I thought I would talk to those other stakeholders and have them come to the table and help.
Dave.
To give a little background, the like Bill had mentioned, the BLM property encompasses about 29 acres. With the LCDC McEwen complex, it pushes it, or not McEwen, but Memorial Field Complex, it pushes it to about 40 acres, I believe.
Correct.
And the reason that all these adjoining properties are going to be encompassed within this RFQ is because of the linear nature. This thing's a mile long, and it has to do with connectivity to all of the amenities that we've got money involved with, the city's got money involved with, the trail systems, the parks, all that sort of thing. So that's why the thing has become critical that we encompass and make sure that the public needs and concerns and wishes are incorporated in the connectivity part of this thing, affecting all this other public space is what it is. The issue that Bill talks about, this the sidewalk along the seawall, is fairly old. Like you said, it's uneven because of the trees, but it's also been identified through some of the stakeholders as being a potential emergency exit out of the fort grounds. If something should happen in the northern part, say on Hubbard Avenue up around the wastewater treatment plant, or something that caused people to want to vacate, that would be a possible way of folks to exit the fort grounds, would be to utilize a hard surface area along that seawall. So just in the interest of public safety, that's why that has been incorporated into this, to make sure we don't overlook something as part of this whole look from 10,000 feet. Answer your question, Brad, the idea is to keep this piece of property in public hands, and it's being dictated by the BLM and their requirements for that to happen. In an ideal world, we'd have our congressional delegation, our federal congressional delegation would come up to bat for the city and say, okay, let's gift this land to the city, no strings attached. In the real world, the way we do it to kind of maybe work towards that goal is we lease it, but we have to go ahead and master plan it in that vein so that we can make sure that we satisfy the requirements of BLM to enter this lease agreement. So it's going to be phased over time. It's not a deal that's going to actually happen overnight. There are some people in some of Doug's presentations that are ready to fund their particular interests in this corridor right away. There are other people that have to go fundraising. They need a footprint before they can do that. There are other people that are going to come to the plate probably a little bit later on in the game after they have the ability to go out and realize what they want to do. So I think that this whole thing is a tremendous opportunity. We can spend probably as much or as little on it in planning this thing as we want to. It's kind of like covered space or counter area or wood shop bench space. You build it and it'll get filled up with stuff. So the more money we want to put on the table, it'll certainly get consumed by this planning process. So I think when Scott Cranston and Doug came to us at our annual planning retreat, they basically told us that this process was going to start and asked if we would kind of nod in agreement that, yeah, we're interested in that, would be interested in being a partner in that down the road. Well, it's time now for this partnership to be consummated, I guess. It's just a matter of us getting the kind of information that we'd like to get before we can commit public funds from our end of it to go towards helping to fund this project. I don't want it to be another three-ring binder on a shelf somewhere, but it has to be a standard that the BLM will buy off on, that we've said we're going to do it rather than just develop it willy-nilly. So it's kind of to satisfy that requirement so that this land can be retained in public hands at the city of Coeur d'Alene.
Mr. Chairman.
Justin first, then you, Brad.
Okay.
To jump on Dave's comments too, it might be helpful, Bill, for the viewing public just to explain a little bit about what that patent means. So if we do receive that from the BLM as a community, that my understanding of that is it basically locks up this land to the city of Coeur d'Alene as long as it's used in public use in perpetuity, forever.
Correct. So I think Janice said it was one-time payment for the patent of $290, something like that. And
$290.
Yeah, $290, 200.
Right.
Yeah. And then, as long as we did what we said we were going to do and didn't misuse the land and turn it into commercial and subdivide and whatever else we were doing, it's free. It's from here on out for 29 acres.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify
Yep,
that.
that's correct.
Another thing to keep in mind about, Doug had mentioned that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but about half of the city parkland has been developed under this same, you might say, string attached.
Yes.
Outdoor public recreation.
Correct.
City park,
So, yeah, those parcels in City
Uphill.
Park are yes, correct.
all of that. So it's not something new that the city has entered into, this restriction on the land. So,
Well, and I'm supportive of doing this, and I understand why we're doing it. And I think you're right, Dave, it needs to encompass the surrounding areas of the BLM land, because if we're going to get a study that's valuable and helps implement this, we got to look at the surrounding areas, because if we just study the BLM land, it's going to end up doing what you and I don't want to have it do, which is, we've seen a number of plans over the years, and some end up going on the shelf and have some nice drawings and artist conceptions, and some turn into something. So I don't know what the budget is on this either. I'm kind of in a void on what to approve today, but I'm supportive of it. And I just want to, I don't want to spend any more money than we have to, but I want to make sure we get a good plan, and you guys figure this out, and there's some clear goals that are put down for whatever company we hire. So we have this is really an implementation plan as well as just a study for the BLM, so that we can work on purchasing this. And I guess maybe when the plan's done, then we can start working with the congressional delegation and before this thing turns cold in a few years, and
Right.
try and work on purchasing this permanently. So
For leasing,
that's the
not
thing
so much a
that-
purchase, it is a lease.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, the lease ties it up and gives us some time, so it doesn't go anywhere. So I think that's great, but there's no reason to wait the whole 30 years if we could purchase it in 5 years or something and
Yeah.
get some money allotted in Congress to buy it. So I just think the sooner the better. So that's all I'm saying. I think this needs to be all encompassing, bring in all the players we can. I just want it to be a implementation plan that's specific, and so that this doesn't go on the shelf and then 5 or 6 years from now, then it's time to do another study, to start implementing something later, and we end up with 2 or 3 studies by the time it's all done. So,
Understood.
thanks.
Deanna and then Scott.
When did we first start working on the Four Corners plan? This was before we had maybe the future BLM process. Can you recall?
Early 90s.
Well, this latest process started last June, but we've been looking at it since, Bill says, about 2002. And that is probably when the Walker-Macy study was done, and they were looking at not just McEwen Park, but how the McEwen Park would connect through and to Independence Point City Park, Four Corners, and they had made recommendations in that report. And that it was about 2002.
And I remember when the mayor's group of people came in, they looked at this also, did they not?
Yes, they did.
And looked at the entire parcel. LCDC obviously has some pretty good skin in the game because we own a pretty good chunk of land along there. It's important that that be a part of the planning process. All right, thank you, Wendy.
Welcome. Could I add one more thing?
Sure.
So what we could do is, if you give us some guidance, we think we have a pretty good idea what the RFQ should contain as far as scope of work, but if you have some pretty strong feelings about certain aspects of it, we can write it, finish it, it's already been started, drafted, and give it to you to make sure that it's what you're looking for. When we do an RFQ, we cannot consider cost. They present proposals and their qualifications, and then you pick a consultant. Then you negotiate with them the contract, and then you get the cost. And what we could do at that point is, if you think it's too much, then we can negotiate some things out of that contract and reduce it down to a budget that you're more comfortable with.
Right?
Yeah, I think so.
So just one point of clarification. So you're asking LCDC to pay for the entire cost of the study that'll be done. Is that correct?
I'm glad you asked. I have a couple of notes, if I could share those. That's our direction from the City Council. And just to summarize a little more what Bill said, generally what a consultant contract like this would include from beginning to end is we have done about 15% of that already, city staff and our Park and Recreation Commission, in the programming and the meeting with stakeholders, and they call it sometimes pre-design. That is done, and it's been done with city staff and our Park and Recreation Commission. And so in doing that, when we go to negotiate the contract with whomever, we believe the price should be smaller than what you would normally see in a contract of this size because of the work we've already done. We're essentially handing them the work and saying, okay, now you're not starting from step one. They've already got a head start. We have put that time and effort into it, and that will ultimately, in our opinion, reduce the cost that you would see from that you normally see from a full contract. If you look at what a principal might cost and the amount of time that just, if it was a consultant that did the work, the 17 meetings times 2 hours a meeting times 2 hours for meeting, post-meeting documentation follow-up times, or plus another 30 hours to summarize all of that effort since last June and put it in presentation form to bring forward, you're talking significant dollars at probably $140 an hour. So we have done that work. Park and Recreation Commission has done that work, and that is at no charge in this process to this point, except to the City of Coeur d'Alene.
So having said that, what would you like from us today, since we don't know an exact cost?
Well, what I'm hearing is that you would like to see what we have drafted for the scope of work and make sure you're comfortable with that. And that doesn't make it a done deal for you. We'll go out and seek proposals, and we can make a selection and then negotiate a contract that includes what you've seen in the RFQ and scope of work, and see where it lands as far as dollars. And like Bill said, our best guess at this point is somewhere in the $100,000 range, maybe less, maybe a little more.
Wendy, is it your direction from the council and your feeling that you need to have some level of financial commitment from us before you go further with an RFQ? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Deanna?
I'm going to make a motion for purchases of discussion, and I would move that we move forward to assist the city in the master planning process for the Four Corners project with the amount up to $100,000, with the city asking stakeholders, other stakeholders along the corridor, to participate financially in this, if at all possible.
I'll second that for purposes of discussion. And maybe I would propose an addition to your motion that, trying to think of how I would word it, that so the Lcdc be able to review the RFP and have some input in the RFP and review it before it's sent out for proposals.
I can certainly add that to the motion.
That's okay with you?
Okay, motion is made and seconded. Tony, do you have that captured?
Not quite yet.
Just a couple of comments while Tony's finishing up. If I can kick off the discussion.
Comment that I would have, I guess, is in the motion, is it critical to have a dollar amount yet? Because if you put a dollar amount in there, it tends to come in at that dollar amount.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
So we could just say we're interested, we support the concept, we need to see some more information, something to that effect without a specific dollar amount. We all know it's going to cost quite a bit of money, but as soon as we say X, that's what we end up spending, in my opinion.
What would you think about just, I mean, in a perfect world, I think I'd like to see us say X percentage not to exceed a dollar amount. Maybe that not to exceed doesn't solve your problem, but if we at least got the first part of that.
So you're saying X percentage of LCDC?
Yeah, to ensure that we have other partners and that it doesn't fizzle away and it's just us.
So say that again. I could revise my motion. Let's make sure where we're at here.
Well,
Mr. Attorney?
a couple of ways. One would just be to say we'd pay up to 75% of the cost, say. And then you might want to go ahead and say, you know, subject to a limit of some figure, but you've kind of, if you do that, you've kind of telegraphed the dollar amount too.
And I hear what Rod's saying, and that's fairly normal. I also know that the city's usually got a pretty good handle on approximate costs because that's what they do and they're good at it. If we set to 75% of the cost, I'm not particularly uncomfortable with that, but I think 75% of what? And does 75% not include, so the 50,000 approximately the city will have in it, is that part of the
Do they get to
other 25%?
count their in-kind? Yeah, I think that's part of our
That's
discussion.
the question I asked
in-kind.
earlier, is whether or not that was already factored into the original cost, and it doesn't sound like it is.
No.
No,
So it's that potential $100,000 plus the 50
plus the
in-kind.
approximately 50% that the city will have in it.
But it-
So, and that may or may not, those numbers, we don't know how those numbers come out.
But Wendy also stated that the amount of work they've done, then the cost should be less.
Yeah.
And I'm totally for the plan also, but as Dave so eloquently stated, there's a lot of partners involved here, and I don't want to be the only paying partner.
Right.
And on that point, let me say, I think I've had some question about, why we think we need to have other partners. And I'd go back to some of the other projects that we've done, like the higher education campus work that we did, that we had a great partnership with not only the city, but with the North Idaho College. If we're talking about having stakeholders that are going to utilize and be adjacent to this area, makes great sense to have them participate, not only in ultimately maybe building out the improvements, but in being a financial partner in the planning so that they have ownership in that plan.
Denny, I totally agree, because I feel like this is the first step of multiple steps, and I think as soon as the plan is in place, I'm sure you'll be back asking for funds for construction. And, I think it's always nice to have those partners in place early on so that they feel like they've got skin in the game all the way along and not being asked later on. So if we're going to be in the beginning, we'll be in the end too.
Yeah. And I also think if those partners are in place, the plan is more apt to not sit in the throwing binder if it'll be put in action quicker. Because I would love to see something done, because there's been way too much talk. It's time to do something.
Deanna?
And I agree. It makes sense to have partners. We're just in the middle of the 2030 planning process and that is also including some of this, is it not?
Correct.
2030. So we have partners there that have already ponied up, so we'll ask them to pony up again on the Four Corners plan, is what you're saying?
Or, yeah, whoever makes sense to request it of.
So that would be probably NIC, maybe University of Idaho. Wastewater?
County.
Is wastewater connected to it at all?
A little bit.
The college is right adjacent to a big chunk of it.
Because it is adjacent to it, so certainly wastewater could be a part of that.
I guess as the second, since I'm the second, I agree with your concept about other partners having skin in the game. I don't know if 25% is the number or not. I guess we could say that for a number. But, I mean, I'd be open to relooking at that when we get farther down the road and we actually know who's got how much skin to put in the game and we have a little more idea on the costs and so forth. But I think we're trying to we've done this on a number of projects. We're trying to give them a go-ahead and tell them we're behind them and they know they can count on us. So, I guess whether we set a percentage or don't set a percentage, I guess it's okay. But I just don't know how we can arbitrarily say, well, this is what it has to be. That may work or it may not work. Or
Mr. Chair?
Wendy?
Could I add one more part of this that may come into play, and that is that one reason that we're asking for consideration of our time in kind being a credit toward whatever percentage you decide is also along that corridor are stakeholders that will be affected by whatever comes out of the dike and levee certification. And those folks are already planning on skin in the game for that, whatever that construction turns out to be. They have contributed to the study that is ongoing now, including wastewater. NIC will be looking at a significant budget dollar amount for whatever needs to be constructed. So you'll be, you're kind of hitting them up twice, and part of this study should include consideration to what's going to happen as far as the dike and levee are concerned.
Tony?
If I might, this based on Wendy's comment there, I think it's
important for the board to realize with the scope we're talking about, a lot of this property is outside our district. So that's another reason why I feel it's important to have partners in this, since we could be criticized for funding a master plan that touches areas that we do not have within our jurisdiction. Thus, having a holistic approach to this, I think, is more beneficial.
So how much of this is out of our district? I thought,
Well, I don't think we'll exactly know till that geographic area is set in stone, but
yeah,
the park, the trail on the water, the dike road, we'd have to look closely at that, but a lot of that's out.
That's out, okay. Some of that's out of the district. Well, and I agree with what you're saying. I was just saying, we can do it, I guess, for the purposes of getting this going. But I just don't know what the final percentage is. I don't know if we can arbitrarily set a percentage or not. I do agree with the concept that there needs to be some other players that have skin in the game. And you made an excellent point.
What if we were to give you a range of percentages, like between 50 and 75, with due consideration for in-kind contributions? And I don't know how specific you need to be to move forward, Wendy. I think that's what we're struggling with.
I think we are more than happy to talk to other stakeholders. Our direction from the council now, however, is that at least this contribution from the city, it is our time in the past and our time in the future. That the city has no dollars to contribute, but what we do best is provide the expertise, the talent, the staff time. We do that exceptionally, and that's what we want you to consider as far as our partnership to this. In addition to that, we are happy to go speak to other folks and see if they would participate in the planning effort.
I don't remember where my motion stands. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, certainly, I could be the only person, but can't we simply say we support the project, and once we understand the scope of the project better, then we can deal with percentages and dollars without today saying up to and a range of percentages, you guys knowing that when we've said we're interested in support a project in the past, we've always come through. And that way we can dial it in a little bit better as we have more information. Because I think right now it's so loose until we understand better, but I think everybody on this board probably supports the concept. It's been on our radar for a long time. So I have no problem with giving the city credit for all the work. You're right, the expertise and talent you bring is worth a lot of money. I just struggle with a percentage or a dollar amount tonight is all. I don't know if you can live with that or not, or if other members say, no, we need to be more specific.
I agree with Commissioner Caldwell.
If we give a percentage and then they go out and shake the brush and it comes up a couple percentage short, then we have to. So I like what Rod's saying. Do we have to give it?
I believe, I agree with Rod. I think it's to that point where we'll give you our verbal commitment. But once again, I think it's predicated on the idea that you find other partners to partner with this on this project. And also that, we have a chance to review the scope of the project when it comes back so that we can have a better understanding of what our total cost is going to be.
Al?
We've been talking about these things long before. I remember we were talking about it in the early 90s, and we were talking to the county about them revamping their campus there. So there are so many unknowns in here and so many entities that have got to be dialed in. I think that it would be right to just say, yeah, we support the initial concept, but we need some checkpoints along the way that will allow us to make some definitive decisions on amounts and so forth later, and get LCDC into the process of the decision points before the council makes those decision points. And we can give them input as to how much we can do and on what schedule. If we just say that we support the basic concept, but come back in whatever the appropriate point is to go on to the next step, because I don't think we can come up with a number or percentage or anything, because we don't know what work's going to be done.
Deanna?
Dave?
Pam?
You've been involved in this from the beginning. What's your opinion?
Well, I was sitting here thinking about what would the city do if they didn't have urban renewal. I think this piece of property is valuable enough to the public that somehow funding would become available to satisfy the BLM. BLM hasn't really come out and said that I'm aware of that it has to be X number of dollars spent in this planning process. In my opinion, I think that the plan should be as gray as possible. The more money we spent, the more particular, the more exacting it will be, the more it's going to cost to develop that plan. So I think there's going to need to be some gamesmanship. I shouldn't say this over the public airways, but I think there needs to be some gamesmanship in deciding what is an appropriate amount of money to adequately plan this corridor. There's a lot of other things that enter into this besides just the planning dollars. The discussion that's come over the last 7 months in this, Union Pacific has a very vital piece of fee-owned property that's on the north end of this that controls all the access the city needs to extend a couple of roads down into the Bellerive Mill River area. To get access across that UP right away, you have to be bought, the entire piece, and then sold back to the adjoining property owners, or it needs to be owned as public by the city, but I believe it's a several $1 million price tag that UP has put on this. This is in addition to just this 29 acres and the planning part of that. So you've got the Riverstone folks on the north end, very, very interested in what's going to go on with this connectivity, this corridor. Very, very crucial to them and the southern development. You've got entities like Avista and the tribe that are very, very interested in showcasing what they do in helping the public to become educated and also to showcase some of the things that are very, very dear to their heritage and their reason for being. So there's a lot more people out here that are interested and want to be partners in this than initial blush. I think that the city is looking for a stake in the ground. I think we could say percentage-wise at this point we will support at least this percentage to give them something to go forward. I don't know if it costs anything, Bill or Wendy, to actually go out and solicit RFQs other than staff time. I don't think it does. I don't know if it inhibits people from participating, if they don't know how much money you got in the bank to spend on the thing. I know the last couple of meetings we've had has been filled an awful lot with land design people. 3 or 4 different firms have been following this pretty close. So I know there's a lot of interest locally for people to participate and get a chance to do this project, just the planning part of it. So I don't think, a number's been kicked around already. It's not a secret. $100,000 has been bandied around here like it's kind of the, okay, that appears to be enough. There should be a product come out of that that's usable, acceptable to all parties. I personally don't think that, and I'm not stepping on your toes here, Wendy, but cutting 350 trees or whatever is going to be cut down there in the dike, and people spending money, those entities down there to do that, I don't think really should enter into the discussions about planning this particular piece of property. I think it's a totally separate deal. That's the western part of what they do. This is the eastern part of what they do. Both important for people that live down in the fort grounds for the flood control insurance, but I don't think that we can link that somebody's spending all this money to do this particular project. I think it has to be parallel with what the BLM project, because this is important to that group down there also. I think we are not in a position to spend the public taxpayers and say we're gonna give this much money to that, because then it doesn't give the people that Bill is talking to a whole bunch of incentive to participate. It needs to be a step back and, yeah, this is important, and that's the long-term viability of what's going to go on. These people need to have an investment in it, and they need to make a conscientious, concerted effort to commit to that. So I think that we could certainly commit for a percentage. I think that that gives people a a parameter to operate within and say, hey, we got to go out and raise X number of dollars. Where are you in on this thing? Because, you know, we've got other projects that are going to go on too, and the life of the district, you know, is certainly coming to an end. So there's other opportunities out there that are equally as important, if not more important, than this particular project. So I think that there needs to be a percentage from this group. I don't know if this answer is short enough for you or not, Deanna. But
I think you're doing a fine job.
this group, I think, needs to give them some concrete commitment, other than saying, we're in, we've done it before, trust us. I think that we need to say, you know, we'll come up with a percentage, and you guys come up with the rest, and we'll do this thing.
Okay, if the second concurs, I'll amend my motion.
Have at it.
Maybe.
The floor is yours.
The floor is mine. All right. Take out the $100,000 and put up to 75% of the cost.
Does the second concur?
And what was the rest of it?
The rest of it with LCDC having input into the scope of the RFP process, the scope of the document, I believe.
Does that cover where we want to be? I'm thinking, or you had something else you thought we ought to
No,
have?
I think that's fine, as long, I mean, we have this understanding that the number's not going to get out of hand, right? I mean, it's just,
But, you know, you have to either have to
think
put
we
a
have to go
top
on some
dollar number
trust.
in, or you say up to a certain percentage and take it from there.
Brad, are you happy with that amendment?
I'm just not sure about throwing a percentage on here, but you know, if that's kind of the way that the opinion is swinging here, I'll go and concur with that.
Here's what I think
75%.
the practical problem is for the city. I mean, until somebody throws some dollars down on the table, it's all a moving target. So how do they talk to the other partners without knowing how much money we're coming up with? And we're not saying flat out for sure what it is, but I think we're giving them enough information with a motion like that they can take that and build on it.
Well, I think what's going to happen, Danny, is the RFQ will go out, listing, you know, all the possibilities. That'll come back in. A firm will be selected, and then you go to that firm and say, how much does this cost to do all of this? At that point, then the numbers start getting adjusted. Say, okay, you know, we've got X number of dollars to cover that. We've got to go out and collect the other percentage from these other people, or it doesn't happen.
Yeah, we're premature right now on dollars. Tony, one question I have is, will we know relatively quickly how much of the proposed mass of land that's looking to be put into this process is within and without of the district?
Well, I think that's kind of the state of the art of this planning process, is that when you bring a team on, they probably will help the city and stakeholders define what it should be. So I'm not sure if we know what the geography is yet.
So if we're 75% or 72% or whatever of the land mass is in our district, I guess that's probably what we should be looking at.
Yeah, we'll have to consider that, yeah.
Which means there'll need to be some checkpoints that we get feedback along the way before the final decisions are
What?
made on amounts.
Go for it.
So the question then still is lingering out there about how we treat the city's in-kind portion. If we're going to parse this up on percentages, we need to sort of articulate how we're going to give them credit for that.
Well, I would agree to that where their in-kind work can contribute to their percentage, if the maker of the motion wants to do that.
Would this work? Would it work to say up to 75% with consideration for in-kind? The city is allowed to contribute in-kind services.
With consideration, so that their in-kind does count.
Yes.
I think I'm comfortable with that.
Explain that to me a little bit more.
So we'd agree to contribute up to 75%, allowing the city to gain other partners, and they can include in that partnership their portion at in-kind service value.
Just to pick a round number, because I'm bad at math, let's say this this RFP did come in at $100,000. Does that mean, you know, if we're doing up to 75%, then the city theoretically did 25, then that's the
Yeah, we're actually
100,000.
done there, aren't we?
Yeah, there's
that
no
were to
point to
happen.
the percentage, because if you trust the city, which we do, and you give them credit, and there's always a trust factor, because you guys aren't keeping hours to the exact minute, we give them the credit for that, that's going to exceed the 25%.
I guess that's okay.
But we still write a check for 75,000.
Yeah.
Or you take the other side of it, says, well, they think in their mind by the time it's all done that they've got 50,000 in the game, so that means 75%. That means we write a check for 150 because they haven't been able to entice anybody else to join in. So our cap is 150 at that point.
You see our problem, Wendy.
We've been in a lot of
Hard to quantify.
We've been in a lot of situations like this over the years where we're trying to give a show of support, that we're behind something. We've been more specific in others and less specific in others. So I don't know. I'm trying to, you know, hopefully we can kind of get moving on pretty soon here. But I'm still, I want to give the city a show of support because I think it's important to do this and support them as the county. I think I agree with the council. I'm okay with that. So I just don't know how specific to be on this thing. But I guess to try and get moving on, if it helps us move on by putting a limit like up to $100,000 and their participation, their in-kind participation can count towards it, I'm okay with that, or we could be a little less specific, but I'd like them to feel like they've got to show us support and have some funding here as this moves along, and then we can maybe get to the next step and refine this as the steps go along here.
Brad,
Wendy-
as I say it, I think I'm more uncomfortable with the in-kind portion just because it's such an unknown factor, and it skews the number. But I think if we were to say we'd pay you 75% up to $75,000, that seems like a pretty good thing you can take around to
Wendy-
raise another 25 grand.
I guess my question is from Wendy. What exactly do you need from us to move forward? I mean, do you need something that's so specific that you feel like you have a dollar amount that you could go with? I mean, I've seen a lot of deals be put together in public where you can say, we're going to support you, you're going to go out and do your best to try to find other stakeholders, you know, you're going to continue to work, you know, to put together more information without having percentages or dollar amounts or those types of things. And then when the RFP is done and we actually start to see quantifiable numbers, you come back to us and say, here's the actual cost, and you know, then we can parcel it out, so to speak. I mean, that's leaving a little bit to chance, but I don't think there's any other way because we don't have enough information at this point in time.
Well, I think that we will be spending some time finishing up the RFQ. There are some costs with notices and publications, but I think that we can get through that process before we have a definitive decision from you. How I see it play out is we finish up the RFQ, we come back here, you say it's good, we advertise, we select a consultant, then we negotiate a contract and a fee. We don't want any cost into this that doesn't have to be there. So whether we've already accounted for our in-kind 50%, we will still talk to stakeholders because you've asked us to, and if there are some stakeholders out there that will contribute, then they should. But after we negotiate a cost, we'll come back to you, and here's the outcome of the stakeholders. We've got these people who are contributing a total of maybe it's $10,000. The contract is negotiated to $70,000, and we would be back to you saying, are you comfortable with $60,000? I want it to be clear that as far as the city's contribution, our direction is it will not be any cash. So it will be uncomfortable for us to come back to you and ask you, after we've gone through all that process, well, city, why don't you come up with another 10? I just want it to be clear that we'll go get what we can from other stakeholders. We'll contribute in kind, and hope it all works out.
I think clearly we understand we're not going to come back and say you need to put cash in. You've already got the in-kind. I like what Mick said, you know, we support the project, we will be there, we just need to refine it. You come back, tell us the cost, we decide what we're going to pay, and it's done. And I just don't see it being that complicated. It's complicated today because we can't quantify the cost.
Right.
But we can quantify our support. And so for me, I just don't think it's that complicated. We make a motion that we support the project. Once we refine the cost, we'll determine exactly how much we support it. And you know that this is something that we, as an urban renewal agency, should be doing. So I don't see it that complicated.
I think you're right there, because no matter what we say today, it'll be different when it comes back,
Sure.
and we'll have to revise it.
Yep.
So why don't we make that assumption up front and not put the dollar figures on it, because it's going to have to change. We know it's going to change, but they've understood our concept of what we're trying to get to, that we don't want
I
to
don't
be
think
that.
the motion has a dollar figure in it, the new motion, right? Can you read the new motion, Tony?
The motion I have is a motion by Commissioner Goodlander, second by Commissioner Jordan, authorizing LCDC partnership funding for the City of Coeur d'Alene Four Corner Master Planning Initiative at a partnership funding level of not to exceed 75% pertaining to the total cost of the planning effort, with LCDC having input into the scope of the RFP process.
That gives us a stake in the ground, which is what the city needs.
How about
Dave,
if
do
we
you
say
see that as a stake in the ground?
total cash cost?
Yes.
That gives the city the, I mean, we're recognizing that you're putting in kind.
So total cash cost, you want a total cash cost in the motion?
Just if you put the word cash in there, or consultant cost.
So 75% pertain to the
Total
total
consultant cost.
Total
to the
consulting cost.
total consultant cost.
And then I think with that, we would ask you to go do your rounds with the other consultants. Let's see what we get, or the other stakeholders, let's see what we get.
This keeps swaying between less specific and more specific, so,
It's a challenge.
yeah, I guess I don't, I may be okay with 82% when we look at this, or I may not, so I'm just trying not to be too specific. I mean, if we need to, if that's a goal to have it 75, I guess I can agree to that for the second, but we're all kind of going the same direction here for the betterment of the community, and we've been in this position a lot of times with showing a support of something like this. So I just still kind of lean towards the less specific, but giving them a firm show of support, whether we throw an estimate of what the price might be or something, but I think this is part of what we do. We do economic development, and we also do public spaces for the betterment of the community, and we've noticed for the last couple of decades, we've been in a unique time in our city where there's been a whole lot of really key pieces of property coming forward, such as this one, that will affect the city for many, many generations. So this is part of what we've been doing, and I just kind of lean to being a little less specific and having them come back, and when they have a little bit more proposal, we can get more specific on it.
What's the
They
committee's?
can always come back.
Yeah.
If they can't get the 25%, we can always revisit it. This gives us a stake in the ground and motion to move forward. I'm going to call for the question.
So are you still in with your second, Brad, on this motion as stated?
Yeah, I think we've had enough discussion. I guess they understand that we support them. So in the interest of being able to get on with the meeting, the second concurs with the maker of the motion so we can move forward.
So, Tony, can you read the motion as now stated?
Motion by Commissioner Goodlander, second by Commissioner Jordan, authorizing LCDC partnership funding for the City of Coeur d'Alene Four Corner Master Planning Initiative at a partnership funding level of an amount not to exceed 75% pertaining to the total consultant cost of the master planning effort, with LCDC having input into the scope of the RFP process.
All right, so mover and the second are good with that?
Yep, let's go.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chairman's an aye. Motion carries.
So I have some questions about what you want to see in the RFQ. So what I can do is the same information I gave to council, which is all the documentation of the meetings we had, so you'll understand how we arrived at this RFQ. The RFQ is just a summary of that stuff that says, okay, here's the things, Mr. Consultant Firm, that we want you to look at, and we want you to consider all of these options. So would that satisfy your desire to look at this RFQ?
Yeah, I
Is
think,
that
Bill,
what
what I'd be inclined to do is maybe appoint a real quick little subcommittee here to
Okay.
serve that function, if that would be okay with the board. I'd like to see Dave on there since he's got the history. Who else would be willing? Deanna?
Okay.
And Al?
Okay, so I just
And then-
need some direction from
Get
you
with
about
Tony.
how much information you guys want. I think it's pretty easy. I just want to make certain I understood what you're asking for.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Get with Tony, get that to Tony, and he'll set up a meeting for you
Okay.
quickly.
After I complete writing it.
Okay. Anything else on this topic from the board? Wendy, Bill,
Thank you so much.
thanks for your time. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks for the stimulating opportunities.
To spend more money.
Okay, next item of business on the agenda is eligibility analysis and report discussion regarding the Atlas Mill site area. Tony, can you give us a little preview of that?
Sure. This agenda item pertains to the Atlas Mill site's eligibility for urban renewal treatment. The Atlas Mill site is a vacant bare land area on the south side of Saltese Way between Riverstone and Mill River developments. As you recall, Idaho's urban renewal statutes call for an eligibility report analysis to be performed to determine if areas proposed for urban renewal qualify for urban renewal. As for the Atlas Mill site, this analysis would determine if it either qualifies as a deteriorating or deteriorated area under Idaho urban renewal statutes. I bring this issue forward now because I've been approached by several stakeholders involved with the Atlas Mill site area that want to see Lcdc as a partner in helping addressing all the infrastructure needs. So what I've done is I've prepared a small PowerPoint presentation to kind of give everybody a feel for what we're talking about here.
Again.
You come over to the light side, that's our dark side.
So what we have right now, this is a depiction of the Lcdc River District, which is in yellow, and the Lcdc Lake District, which is in pink. This is the Atlas Mill site area. So this area lies between the existing Lake and River District boundaries on both the easterly, northerly, and westerly sides. To refresh your memory, back in 2003, when the Lcdc was forming the River District, we had this entire area in red studied for potential eligibility under Idaho Urban Renewal Code. You see that the Atlas Mill site was included in this study in 2003. The area in 2003 did qualify for urban renewal treatment. As you see in the report, the numbers pertain to the numbers on the map pertain to these different type of issues. Like number one, it says a substantial number of deteriorating or deteriorated structures, insanitary or unsafe conditions, problems with sewer. And you notice that in 2003, the mill was still there. And so what happened is that the county and the mill at that time shared with Lcdc and the current city council, or the then city council, that they would prefer that this area not be included in the river district. They would like to see it stay in the county, and at that time the board agreed and the city council agreed, and so that's why this area was left out of the river district, even though at the time this commission thought it would be wise to include it because we could kind of foresee how things were shaping up, but the decision was made to exclude it, so that's why it's out. This is what it looks like today. The yellow, once again, is the river district as it currently exists. The pink is a lake district. Washington Trust Bank owns this portion of the Atlas Mill site area. Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad right-of-way is this area right here that runs through the Atlas Mill site. And the Stimson Lumber Organization and others own the remaining of these parcels. So that's the current ownership, and those are some of the folks that have been approaching me on would Lcdc be interested in helping out with infrastructure on these issues on this entire 70-plus acre site. So what I would ask the board to consider tonight is to direct me to perform or maybe basically refresh the Atlas Mill site area eligibility analysis that was performed in 2003. Once that is complete, I would engage a consultant to do that, and once that is complete, the Lcdc board would decide whether or not to accept the completed eligibility report. If accepted, Lcdc forwards the eligibility report to City Council and to the Kootenai County Commissioners, since portions of the Atlas Mill site still are located in the county. LCDC and City Council received consent from Kootenai County Commissioners that they agree that the site is eligible for urban renewal. And then the City Council will decide if the Atlas Mill site area should receive urban renewal consideration, and if so, ask LCDC to prepare an urban renewal plan to address how they would approach including that under the LCDC umbrella. So basically, this area qualified for urban renewal treatment 10 years ago. It really hasn't changed over that time. We think it will still qualify because the statutes haven't really changed that much in the 10 years of affecting these type of eligibility studies. So I would look for the board to direct me to just see if the area still qualifies for eligibility status, and that would just enable us to have the conversation whether we take it forward or not to City Council and the Commissioners for consideration.
Okay, questions of Tony?
I have one, Mr. Chair.
Dave?
Tony, back when this area was under consideration, as you briefed us on, didn't we also jump across the river and include a portion of that southern property across the river in that eligibility?
No, we did not.
I thought the Magnusons had approached us on something.
They approached us several years ago about that, but that was not included in this eligibility study.
Okay.
Should it be now?
It was discussed.
Would it qualify?
I don't know.
That's the purpose of this exercise, is to determine whether land qualifies. How many acres are we talking about roughly, Tony?
The 10 parcels there are about 70, and the railroad right-of-way is a little over 7, so 75 to 80 acres.
It makes total sense if you look at it from a land planning perspective. You know, it's that 70-acre chunk or 77-acre chunk out of the middle of the river district there.
Well, the challenge we have, if I may, is that we have 70 acres sitting there doing nothing for the community. It's not adding value in any sense, from a valuation standpoint, from a community benefit to anything for the community. So we were hoping that the private sector would jump on this and get this thing going over the past few years, and they haven't. Now we're starting to see some energy, but they would want some partnership help to take care of all the infrastructure needs as well as signalization needs that are going to be required for bringing this parcel into a community benefit status. So.
Deanna?
Well, I'm going to make a motion that we move forward with the eligibility analysis for the Atlas Mill site area.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we move forward with the eligibility analysis. Any discussion or other questions?
What do you think the cost will be?
The cost for the 2003 effort for that whole area was $3,000. I'm estimating we're probably going to be in the $3,000 to $5,000 range. Hopefully, since it's a refresh of an existing analysis, it'll be cheaper. But that's probably in the range, that $3,000 to $5,000 range.
Do we have partners?
Pardon?
No. This is all in our
Across the
pocket.
table, that's your partner.
Yeah.
We're glad to help you.
We did discuss this in the Finance Committee a week ago, and we all thought that this was an important thing to do. So
I agree.
I like the motion and the second.
Yeah, the first step is just to determine if it's even eligible. If it were to go further, it requires, as Tony indicated, consent and action not only by the city, but in this case by the county. And then also, we had some other discussion. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion lately about East Sherman and why we don't do something in East Sherman. People might be wondering, why would we pick this area versus East Sherman? This area has development potential that right now it's hard to identify in East Sherman. And in order for us to expect to grow any increment from which to do public improvements and infrastructure, you need to have a project that's going to create some assessed value increment. And right now that has been an elusive commodity on East Sherman. So hopefully that changes, but that's the current state. Scott?
Mr. Chairman, we just talked about how important having partners is, especially with urban renewal, and it sounds like we have some partners ready to go here. So it would be
I mean, classic urban renewal, if we have partners ready to go, and where we don't have an East Sherman yet, so we can look at East Sherman if people come forward too.
Brad?
If I may briefly, Mr. Chairman, also, this is adjacent to our district and surrounded by our district. East Sherman, I think, would require the city council creating a new urban renewal district because it's...
This would be a new district as well, probably, Brad, because of
You
the
think it will?
limitations on amending your plan now are so strict that we wouldn't have enough amendment
Okay,
room to
I was
add
thinking
them.
this would be an expansion of the district, but still, it's adjacent to it, and East Sherman isn't. And there needs to be some consensus building on East Sherman, and a lot of people don't realize East Sherman had a revitalization project in the mid-'90s when the street was totally rebuilt and the sidewalks were done and the street lights and so forth. But that's an example of when you don't do the placemaking and some of the other aesthetics with it. A lot of people don't even know that there was a revitalization done there about 20 years ago. But I agree, something needs to be done with East Sherman. But we're not at that point yet.
Dave?
This is a classic case of 70 acres being dedicated, might say, to one specific project. You know, you set it up for that, somebody comes in, develops it, boom, and you're done with it. You know, more of the classic of what Post Falls has done in some of their activities over there. So it makes a lot of sense.
Or at least similar, because we have 2 ownerships? Maybe 3 with the railroad.
Yeah, there's 3 and possibly 4. I'm not quite sure of who owns some of those parcels up around Celtice. I'm not sure. Things are very fluid out there as we speak. So.
And it's also, you know, private enterprises had some time to do something with the property, but they're stalled because of the infrastructure problems and the railroad and some other things. So it's, like Dave said, it's classic urban renewal property there.
When did that mill close, do you recall, Tony?
2005, 6.
5, 6, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't long after we cut the district up and running.
Right.
Well, the mill closed, but they were still staffing the office there, Stimson was, for several years afterwards.
And that office is now gone.
Empty.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's gone. Any other
Then
discussion?
just going back to East Sherman, would it make sense to look at the eligibility analysis on East Sherman in conjunction with this, as long as we're hiring somebody to do it?
I think it's so distinct it would be a separate
Would it have to
study.
be totally different?
Yeah, I didn't mean to distract us off on East Sherman.
Well, I
I just
understand
wanted to
that.
anticipate the questions.
Get after it.
I hear that about East Sherman too, but I almost think it's so separate and distinct, as you said. I think there needs to be some direction from council maybe first as to whether they want to start looking at East Sherman. I think there needs to be some consensus building with the neighbors and the property owners in East Sherman.
Well, you know, if you speak of Post Falls, and not to dwell too much on East Sherman because that's not the motion, but I think it's indicative of the problems they've had in their city center district. They didn't really have a good project to build increment. So I don't think we want to get the clock ticking on a project on East Sherman until we've got something concrete to work with, or at least a good potential. Anyway.
Partners.
Other comments, particularly on the Atlas property? No other debate? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that. Committee reports. Finance Committee, Rod.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, let's go ahead and start with the Lake District first, if we could, and we'll start with the balance sheet. During the month, we did have an increase in our cash assets of slightly over $2 million, $2,039,339 to be exact, and that's a result of receiving the large tax increment check in January from the county. So, big increase in that item. Everything else on the asset side stayed about the same. If you go to the liability section, you'll see that the due to the Arts Commission line item, larger than normal because of the large January increment check that we received. And then on the mortgages and note payable, we have an increase in that line item of $583,423, and that reflects primarily our monthly debt obligations that we pay down, and then a draw from Washington Trust on the bond, and that draw was $600,000. As you recall, we draw on that bond to fund payments that are approved by this commission. If you go to the profit and loss statement for the Lake District, that's where you'll see the amount of increment check that we received, $2,125,755. We had a rent income of $13,487, interest income of $142, so you have total revenue of $2,139,384. If you go down on the expense items, you'll see that large item for McEwen Park infrastructure, $656,435. That was a result of a CNI invoice of $649,977, and then Team McEwen invoice of $6,458. No other significant items in the month other than a little more repairs and maintenance that we did on our triplex, Young triplex, and our 728 Sherman Avenue properties. So really for the district, it was all about the increment, and it was all about paying for the bills we have on the McEwen project if you were to analyze the large items. Next, we'll go to the River District. And in the River District, which certainly doesn't have as much activity, but the River District did have an increase in cash that was significant of $929,354. That was a result of the tax increment that we received. Nothing else significant, but if you go to the profit and loss, that's where you'll see the money that we received in total. Tax increment, property taxes, $938,458. And then all other items were typically the same as we always have with sharing our general administrative costs between the two districts. Tony is just passing out the payable sheet, but before we get to the payables, are there any questions on either the balance sheet or the profit and loss for either district? Seeing none, let's move on to the payables, because there is a significant amount of payables that I will need your approval on. We'll just start at the top. Elam and Burke, $1,017.95, primarily for their legal counsel legislative issues. Hawley and Troxel, $1,980, legal counsel legislative issues. Molitor Consulting, $2,031.86. Keith Erickson Consulting, $1,400. The Redevelopment Association of Idaho, our contribution this year of $2,000. And then the Plaza on Sherman project, this was a payment of $20,822. Trying to remember which project this was, Tony.
This was the project where the subway, the new subway is.
7th and Sherman.
Yep, subway project.
Streetscape project.
Okay. And then you go to the semi-annual payments. As you recall, once we receive the increment checks, we have a lot of different agreements we're involved with on projects, and then we make our payments. So rather than talk about each individual item on there, I will just highlight some of the larger ones and maybe significant transactions. You can see that Tony's got two of them on here that we made our final payment on the Northwest Place IRA final payment. And then you go down a little bit further, Mill River OPA final payment. So those are done. And then you look at the large items, Riverstone West, about halfway down the page, $121,450.63. And then you have the Washington Trust Lake District payment of $1,040,000. And we pay that, as you recall, twice a year, each time we have the increment. So that's a large payment. All the payments added up are $1,311,387.16. So we have made significant progress on paying back some of our obligations, and as mentioned earlier, we have two that are now fully paid. You may recall when we were doing a lot of these obligations, we quite often put a cap on the total amount of interest that we would pay, and that has served us well, along with having an interest rate that was market-driven and reasonable for us to pay. The next line item you'll see is Magnuson McHugh audit, progress payment of $1,800, and the total of our scope of work in total $12,400. Then large items down at the bottom would be, again, the McEwen Park project. Several different invoices to pay, totaling $565,714.24. And then a smaller one for T. McEwen on design work, $8,007. So the McEwen project for this month, $573,714.31. You take all of our payables together, they total $1,916,153.28. And if you look at the sheet, for sure, the bulk of those expenses are the payments we've made on our obligations and also the new payments that we need to make as it relates to McEwen project, the McEwen Park project. Any questions on the payables? I know there's a lot of activity there.
Rod, just a point of clarification. So the Riverstone West Phase 1 OPA is an example, $121,450.63. What this is, it's a repayment of Riverstone West for the improvements that they already paid for. So Riverstone West went in there, and I understand this, but I'm clarifying it mostly for the public. Riverstone West went in and put in the improvements with their own funds. Then through the increment that was generated off of those, the area that encompasses, when that comes in, we pay them back for the improvements that they've already pre-funded. So there's no money from Lcdc that's gone to these projects to fund the cost of the projects. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's a good explanation.
And that's for the public improvements.
Right, I understand that. But my point is that two things. Number one is they have already paid for these. The developer already paid for these, and they're just getting reimbursed. And number two, it's only from the increment in that area.
And the beauty of that model that we've used is we don't take risk as a commission of having to pay for something and we didn't get the increment to pay for it.
Right. If it fails, then we
we
have no risk.
Exactly. And it's been a good model for us. Tony?
And just a final point on that is you were just saying is that, and the final caveat is that if the project itself does not generate enough increment to pay back the entire debt by the time the district expires, our obligation ends. So, you know, there is a sunset on these notes, whether they pay off or not, and the developers are aware of that.
Yeah.
Great clarification.
Yeah, it's important to remember how this works, and works pretty well for us.
Move to approve the financial statement and payables as presented.
Second. Moved and seconded to approve the financials and the payables. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, just one other thing, just for information purposes for the commission. When Tony does receive increment checks, he performs an analysis as to the percentage we receive of what we think we're going to have for the whole year. And it's about on track with what we thought. So when we do our budget and we try to determine the amount of money we're going to have available, it's pretty much on track. Fair statement, Tony?
Correct.
Yeah, and we look at that every time we get the checks in. So just so you guys all know, and the viewing public, budget versus what we're actually receiving is pretty close. And we try to be conservative on what we're going to receive.
Good.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rod. Housing Committee, Commissioner
The
Goodman.
Housing Committee, we met with the folks from Boise on the Midtown project about 2 weeks ago, Tony, and are moving forward. They're moving forward, getting their analysis done that they have to do in order to apply for the funding for it. We are going to have a neighborhood meeting the first week in March. That seemed to be the available time for the folks from the Midtown that are organizing that, so we're moving forward with that. I think it's going well. There seems to be some very positive energy. Met with Mayor Whittemire on the project, and he's very supportive of moving forward with it and getting it rolling, so I'm feeling very good about it.
Good.
That's great.
Good progress. Anything else on housing? Not. Let's go to Parking Committee. Commissioner Jordan.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, as your representative on Parking Commission, don't have a lot to report, but at our last meeting, they are still, as we've discussed, looking at the completion of the parking structure and so forth, being on track for May. Don't have a firm date in May, but we keep using that May timeline. And also some discussion about trying to get the public better aware of this new parking lot down below the City Hall on the lower side of the City hall here that has about approximately 160 spaces in it that for some reason people don't seem to utilize very much, and someone's going to be parking at the library for more than 2 hours. That space is available. And also there's about a 2-block area to the east of the city hall where it's a residential area, and the residents are being flooded with cars from workers that park there, I think because it's the closest place to park. And we're going to look into how to maybe encourage the workers, instead of flooding the neighborhood with their cars during the workday, to maybe encourage them to walk about a half a block farther and utilize this parking lot that's available. So I think that's pretty much it from the Parking Commission.
We're talking workers other than city workers? Just people who work
some,
elsewhere?
like some office workers and employees and so forth, yeah. And parking is kind of like traffic. It kind of flows like water to the closest place or the easiest place to go. And so
That's free.
And it's free. And so, there's, in this 2-block area east of the city hall, some of the residents there don't even, have garages or parking areas, because those houses were built before any of the requirements. And so all some of them have is on-street parking, and they just don't have anywhere to park down there. So we're trying to figure out some ways to encourage the employees to utilize the city parking that's available.
Okay, any questions of Brad? Thanks for that report. Communications Committee, Dave.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Not a whole bunch going on this last month. Mr. Erickson and Trey did get our 23rd edition of our newsletter distributed out yesterday. Tony, are you going to go over the ULI conference? Your deal. Okay. Topics in the newsletters you probably all have reviewed. Has to do with the Four Corners, the downtown sidewalk repair, and also the upcoming Urban Land Institute conference next week. Also a community profile on Mr. Phil Boyd, one of the principals, the main forces behind the McEwen Park project, and also a longtime Coeur d'Alene resident. A couple of other things kind of peeking and tweaking this coming up. I noticed on our website, kind of gone stale a little bit on past board video segments. I think last summer, June 3rd of 2013 is the last segment that's on there. Talked about this with Tony and Keith both, and we will upgrade and make it a little more current and pertinent to what's going on in the real world. So we'll do that, and also talked a little bit with Keith about firing up and maybe doing the webcam link again as we enter the last couple months phase of the project for the months of maybe March, April, and May, like we did last summer and fall. I thought that was a pretty good key for the community to access visual progress of what was going on. The fun stuff is certainly starting to happen as you start seeing the finishes show up. And so we're going to be entertaining and reviewing with our media links on how we can do that economically next month. Does anybody have any questions for anything going on in our communication initiatives? Continue to hum along here, and it's kind of hard to believe we've put out 23 newsletters.
It is.
It's become almost an automatic thing anymore. So, again, if anybody has any topics they'd like to see addressed or possible directions, contact myself or Keith or Tony.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Good report. Executive Director's report, Tony.
Just a couple items. Next Thursday, the 27th, is going to be a busy day in Coeur d'Alene. It's going to start off with the opportunity in the morning at 9 o'clock at the Kroc Center with a new Urban Land Institute program on building healthier places that we are putting together with National Urban Land Institute specialists as well as a local panel. I think it'll be a very good program, kind of getting into the built environment and how architects and developers are really starting to work with making places healthier to live and communities healthier to live in. So it's a little bit different, the type of ULI program that we've had in the past. I think it'd be beneficial if you all can attend, and the general public is definitely welcome to and invited to attend. There's flyers available, and it can be seen on our website and the ULI Idaho chapter website. Also, then at noon on the 27th, we have our workshop with City Council here in this room. We'll work through the Lcdc annual report and engage council on other issues and topics. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Questions of Tony?
When will the agenda for the joint meeting with the council come out? Will it come out like Tuesday, Wednesday next week?
That's my anticipation. I've seen a draft of it today. We're still working with the city on that, so early next week.
Okay.
I guess if time allows, you could put each chairman on for a discussion item with the council while we're together. May not spend a lot of time on it, but that issue keeps coming up, so it could be a quick discussion item and
The pleasure of the board. It's-
test the temperature of the council on what to do with each
What's the
chairman.
board's pleasure there? You want to?
Are we going to discuss with them this process here? Bring them up to date? Okay.
No, I've been keeping the city in the loop on this one.
Primarily is our sort of going over our annual report topics, is give the council a chance to ask us some questions and
Well, I'd like to
give and
hear.
take.
I'd like to hear their take on Chairman.
Okay. We'll add that. Okay, anything else of Tony?
No, sir.
All right, so board commissioner comments, just in general. Anyone? Meeting's a little longer than
Well,
normal.
I think it's great all 9 of us are here.
That is a good thing.
Seating's a little crowded, and I think these people, one of these years, will figure out they're sitting on the wrong side of the table.
We kind of like the exercise,
This
Dave.
is the A side. Just
We're going to get
move in
a
the
separate
middle
row
of
of
the
seats
meeting.
back here for you for the next meeting.
Theater seating over here.
Yeah.
It's good to see everybody
All right.
You get the good seats and the peanuts.
so far.
Public comment, any public comment at this point? No public comment? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much for a longer than normal meeting.
You appreciate that? You want us to strive for that?
Too long of a
If I take
meeting.
that for- oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah. You got to watch that.